Hi, I'm Rachel Clift from the Ripon Public Library, the Teen and Adult Services Librarian. Thank you for joining us for a peek into publishing with Taylor. Taylor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Taylor Navis. I'm a content management coordinator at Harper Collins Publishers, and I also co-founded and I'm a co-editor of Burnt Pine magazine.
Very cool. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into publishing and your internships and experiences that led to this point?
Yeah, so I grew up in Waupun, Wisconsin, not too far from Ripon, and my love of reading first came when my grandmother took my twin and I to the public library a lot because we love to read and we would tear through books, especially me. Um, and uh, then I guess during high school, I took a lot of English classes and I took a lot of creative writing classes too. And that's where my love of writing began too. So that's where kind of the foundation of both. So when I applied to UW Green Bay for my undergrad, I went in undecided, but eventually, chose English with an emphasis in creative writing and then communications as my minor. But I took a lot of journalism classes because, I was like, I want to be Lois Lane and solve the world's problems. But eventually, obviously, that didn't happen. And then, yeah, during UW Green Bay, I was a part of Sheepshead Review, which is a literary journal, started at the bottom, working as a nonfiction reader, getting a feel of publishing to say. And eventually I loved it so much and I was the editor in chief my last semester there in 2016. Loved it. I also I was an intern for an online journal too called Syllabus, which dealt with more with educational materials where I would proofread and copy edit these syllabi and course materials for professors that would be published them. A little bit above, my knowledge of educational materials, but it was a lot of fun. It was a good experience. So after I graduated UW Green Bay in 2016, a friend of mine, former classmate, Alex, who I worked with on Sheepshead Review with, started a literary journal, an online literary journal, because we wanted to kind of keep that, you know, feeling going, wanted to keep our feet in some form of the publishing world. So we've been doing that for about, I think, 5 years, and it's hard, but it's fun. And I mean, after I graduated, I took that year, trying to apply to jobs, and nothing was happening because all the jobs postings were listing, an insane amount of years of experience that you need. So I decided that I was going to get another degree, and I applied for a few master's programs in publishing around the United States, and I eventually was admitted to Emerson, and I was admitted to another one, but I chose Emerson because I'm like, it's East Coast, baby. So yeah, I started my grad program at Emerson in fall of 2017. Their grad program is called publishing and writing, and you could choose an emphasis of what you wanted to do, which was book publishing, magazine publishing, and electronic publishing, like ebooks. I chose book because that's what I loved. I love books, love to read. Um, and while I was there, I was able and was fortunate to get a paid internship with Harvard Education Publishing Group, which is, located, it's affiliated with Harvard, as the people call it. A lot of people up here like to mention that they're part of Harvard, by the way. They will come into a store and be like, I went to Harvard. So I have to name drop it at least 5 times or else I lose my Harvard card. So at Harvard Education Publishing Group, I was the production intern. They published about, I think, 20 manuscripts or 20 books per year. So 10 to 12, maybe actually 10 to 12 per season. So there's a fall season and a spring season. And I would be given the manuscripts. Basically, I was also given a checklist too. So I'd proofread everything because it's all been copy edited. So all the grammar and spelling should be fine. And I was, with my checklists, I would start off maybe with looking at, the index and seeing if all those are all, if that's all kosher. And the end notes, so like at the back of a nonfiction book, you have end notes with key phrases saying like, this is on page this, and this is the source. And I would have to look through the manuscript as well to make sure, okay, is this actually on this page, and does it actually line up, and all that jazz. I also be looking at formatting, so maybe a paragraph is looking real wonky, or maybe a word is spelled differently too, with consistencies and everything. So that's what I would do. And I was there for maybe, oh gosh, over a year. And because it was paid and I needed money, and as one does. And I mean, after that, over a year, I was getting toward the end of my grad program, and I was thinking I need to get out because I've learned, I think, everything I've learned from this internship, and I need something new. So I applied to a lot of internships, and eventually I got into one with Hachette, which is the number 3 or 4 publisher now. They do a lot of fun stuff, but I really like Hachette. It's great. So the week after I graduated in summer 2019, I went and worked in New York City for 3 months as the digital production and manufacturing intern. I got to look at a lot of color proofs of like cookbooks, so I could take like a little magnifying glass to see all the little dots of color, to see like this picture has too much blue in it, so we need to get rid of some cyan, which is blue. When I was first in publishing, I didn't know that there was like different color things, like CMYK are all the colors that are in a book basically that's used. And so you had cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. So like just learning that the color separations of cookbooks and color proofs was really fun, because I'm a very visual person, very visual learner. And I also was able to start paging books, which is what I do now. So you're given the design, the interior design, so like how like the chapter titles are going to look, how the text is going to look like, and I'm given the manuscript that's been copy edited, and I put it together and I make the book. And I figured out like, hey, this is what I would really like to do. And so I was just, I don't know, I just was like happy there, because like I figured like, oh, I finally made it. Like I know what I want to do. I love this company. But alas, it was only an internship. I was able to get it extended, which is great. But alas, I had to leave. And I went back to Boston and job searched, nothing. Started a part-time job at a bread shop and a part-time job at a bookstore. Eventually, I was given opportunity to have it become full-time. So in January 2020, I started my full-time job at the bookstore, where I learned a lot about, selling books. You have to be on top of trends. You have to know what's hot and what's not. You have to be able to give your opinion and say, this is a great book and this is why. And I was not used to that. I was not, even though my father is a salesman, I could try to charm people with my sales tactics, but wasn't for me. So yeah, I'm continuing to apply to jobs. And finally, I see a job posting for Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. They're known for Lord of the Rings and Curious George. And yes, for a production.
Lord of the Rings, a favorite.
Yes. They had, oh man, in their office, they had like a whole like Lord of the Rings like type deal in there. But anyways, because I got the job. Surprise, surprise, no. So, I applied for the production associate position, and I got it. And I started March 9th, 2020. 3 days later, told to work from home. So I learned this whole job that I had virtually. So essentially I did the same thing as what I was doing at my internship, was getting the design and then getting the manuscript, putting it, making a book, and then going through passes of getting it corrections and stuff like that and putting those in. And then eventually, because of the pandemic, HMH, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, put the trade division up for sale. The trade division is, you know, fiction, nonfiction, and they had an education side too for like teachers and stuff. So they put us up for sale, I think, not too long after I started. And then we were sold to Harper Collins in May 2021. And eventually, yeah, we were all given new titles. I was given a promotion. So content management coordinator, not on the bottom anymore, like one step up. And now I'm just still, you know, in this transitionary period of trying to learn this new job and their new systems. And yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, it sounds like it was, you know, I think a lot of us who end up working with books have this childhood love of books, because I was the same way. Like, you know, I grew up loving books, and I went into college just like you know, undecided. And then I was like, I want to do something with books, and I got
Yeah.
a job at the library, and I've been at a library ever since. So can you tell us a little bit about the process of getting a book published?
Yeah. So, you know, you start as in like, I'll just be the author for a second. So you start, you know, you write your manuscript, and I would definitely recommend, just on a side note, if you want to get a book published, get a literary agent, because most of the big publishers do not most, all the big publishers do not accept unsolicited manuscripts just mailed to them.
Okay.
They'll throw it right away. Oh, they might
Which
throw it away, or they'll just put
I
it in a
think you
slush
see
fund.
that, yeah, you see that a lot in movies where people just send in a book and then it gets published. So it's good to know that that's not how that really works.
Yeah, get someone to represent you. Get a literary agent. So a manuscript is usually acquired by a acquisitions editor, and it's sometimes also acquired in an auction depending on the author's, you know, status. Like if it's a celebrity author, people will go and bid on these manuscripts. But usually it's from, yeah, a literary agent sending them basically like, these are what I think. Here you go. here are the books that I have here. And basically, usually maybe an editorial assistant or the editor will read through them, just like breeze through them. Like if it doesn't grab you like by like the first 3 pages, I'm sorry. And then it's taken to an acquisitions meeting where the editor then, you know, states the case of why that publisher should publish it, like why it fits their vision. And if it's accepted, then, you know, the editor goes and does their job by doing structural editing and saying like maybe delete this plot point, or, you know, fix it. Like developmental editing is basically just fixing the story, and line editing is fixing what's been written there and like maybe changing the words and like maybe, you know, making it more concise, more understandable, readable, or more jazzed, like more fun too, depending. And then it goes to copy editing. And all the while this is happening too, the manuscript is being sent to the designer, it's being sent to sales and marketing, and they're creating all these plans of like, how can we market this book to the readers? When can we print it? And because also if you miss your printer date, fun fact, it's not gonna be good. Don't miss your printer date. Okay. And so yeah, the cover designer gets it and the interior book designer gets it. Because usually they're separate. Sometimes they're both. It really depends. I think more with young readers, the cover designer does also the interior design too. And, you know, they pitch ideas back and forth, like they show samples to the author and the editor, like, this is what we have. And usually like, no. And then they do like several passes until it's final. And then you send that final design to me, the compositor typesetter, the content management coordinator, and the manuscript comes back from the copy editor. It's final, it's good. And then it's given to me, and I make the book. And then I set it out as basically the first pass, so the first pages. So it's been made into a book. I did it. And I send it to a managing editor who's in charge of scheduling. So like when things are due and when it needs to be done by, and they're basically just the project manager. They're emailing you, and they're emailing design, they're emailing sales, and they're emailing the editor and everybody. I would never want that job, by the way, because it's too stressful. Anyway, so yeah, I send it to the managing editor, and then I wait, for a time, and then they send it back to me with corrections from the proofreader and the author, and then I go put those in, and I make second pass. Now, if this is a nonfiction book, this is also when you send it to the indexer, because pages shouldn't be, like, paragraphs shouldn't be moving really anymore at this stage. And then you go through a couple rounds of this. You wait for if it has art in it, you wait for that final art to pop it in, stuff like that. And then, it's final. I usually the compositor uploads it to the printer, and then you get basically a file back from the printer saying this is what it's going to look like when it's printed, and those are called blues. So you go through the blues and be like, this is wrong, or like maybe the margins should be shifted, so like the text should be like lower, higher on the page, or like maybe we messed up the copyright page and something needs to be entered in, or there's one time I had overlay of text, so I had the same page twice over. I don't know how that happened, but I fixed it.
Good.
Fixed it. And then, then it's fine, it's sent, it's approved, and then it goes to print. And then that's really, really it. The author probably goes on maybe a tour, and depending on situations and climate. So,
yeah.
So I'm basically, my part of where I'm at is, like the middle back end part of it. And before, when I said you don't want to miss your printer date, is because they schedule these so far in advance, like months, that if you miss your printer date, you might not be able to get back in for like another month. So then that bumps the public when it's being released to the public. Because after they're printed, they're all basically sent to a warehouse. And then the warehouse, distributes. Yeah.
Wow, I definitely think there's a lot more to, the process of getting something published than I think a lot of people assume. And, like you said, it's no longer that you can just send your manuscript to someone. I think that's something that, we see a lot in TV and films, and it's definitely changed.
Yeah. I've told a lot of people, I don't know, because I say that I'm publishing, all my parents and their friends are like, oh my gosh, my mom, she wrote a book, what should she do? And I'm like, well, if she wants it published like how it's been done for years, lifetimes, is to get an agent so you can get into like a publisher. But now they're self-publishing, where basically you can just do it yourself. So yeah, I don't think a lot of people understand that self-publishing can be a big thing too, because you have to hire your own copy editor, you have to hire your own proofreader, you have to design your own book, and people don't know that there's a lot that goes into it, and figuring out like a cover, and then trying to market your book among the hundreds of thousands of books that other people are self-publishing too is a whole big thing too. And sometimes it's just nice, even though it can be hard to get published, it's nice to have, like, they have a team for that. They have a team for marketing, they have a team for publicity. And because that's, the main thing is getting your book out there. Because I think that word of mouth is still such a big part of getting your book sold.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, people have to know about it, to either go get it from a bookstore or buy it online or even pick it up at the library. You have to know it exists a lot of times, unless you're just browsing the stacks.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you probably give and get book recommendations for people all the time, and that's how I started reading V.E. Schwab. Like, people were like, they're very, very good writer. That's how, after I thought V.E. Schwab, okay. I thought her books were so great because I felt magical. Like when I read Harry Potter, I felt that same feeling again. And when I read V.E. Schwab, I'm like, this is it. I love reading again because after a while working in publishing, you don't really want to stare at words anymore. But yeah.
So, what is your favorite part of doing your job?
My favorite part, to be honest, first the initial thought is free books, but honestly, during my internship, this isn't technically a part of my job, but we were allowed to go to a printer where they print covers. It was somewhere on Long Island, and I was able to, see covers that haven't been printed yet. So I saw Margaret Atwood's The Testaments before the book was published, which I thought was pretty cool, because it was just wonderful. Like you had to like keep things hush hush too, because I also saw like a cover that I worked on with my supervisor too at her shop. I was like, oh my gosh, we did that. We picked out like this is gonna be the glossy part, and this is where it's gonna get a little bit of glitter and stuff like that. So that's
Yeah,
pretty.
that's very cool. You get like sneak peeks of books. And I'm sure with editing, you get to read books before they're out and available to the public too.
Not necessarily, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't really get to read them because if I took in the time to read every single book that I worked on, I wouldn't get anything done.
Oh, I
I
think that's interesting because I think a lot of people assume that if you work in publishing, you get to read the entirety of every book you work on.
No, yeah, no, not for me. Unfortunately, I mean, if I was maybe working in design, like cover design, they kind of have to read a little bit of the book to understand what's happening in it to be able to kind of, put it on a cover to make you want to read it. Me with the interior, I get to see the interior and like look at the words, and maybe like a line will catch my eye, and I'll be like, "What is that? What's happening in this book?" But it's more of like looking at like aesthetically, like does this paragraph look very loose? Is there too much space in between the words? And stuff like that's what I'm more looking at. I would love to read some of these, but honestly, if I like a book, I'll just have it sent to me, or just buy it because I want to support the author.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Um, so, um, you kind of talked about what the duties in your job are. What's a normal day look like for you?
Uh, I think I'm gonna base this off of when I worked with HMH because we're still kind of doing a transition period with Harper
Yeah.
Collins. I just wake up 8 a.m. That's when I start my day. Get my coffee. Check my email. Make sure that I'm not missing out on anything cool. Um, so with my job at HMH, I was able to work on nonfiction, fiction, and then young readers titles. So I had like three and paperbacks because paperback was like a separate thing too, as well. So I would check to see like what projects I have going on and where they're at. Do I have corrections coming in? Do I need to get first pages out by a certain time? And just kind of, just basically just check my email and just make sure I'm not missing anything. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you get like 5 emails for one thing and you're just sitting there trying to read through everything to trying to parse out what people are saying.
Yeah.
But if I were to say like get like a nonfiction book back and I'm going to be making the second pass. So like the first pass is when you send it out, like you made the book, and then you send it to the managing editor, who sends it to the proofreader and the author, and then they look at it, and then they send it back with feedback and corrections. So then I take, depending on how many corrections there are, sometimes the author can be a little persnickety, and there can be hundreds of corrections. I think the most I've done has been like 900 corrections in a PDF.
Wow.
It gets a little slow on your computer as you're trying to scroll through each correction. But then I just sit there for I don't know how many hours, just putting them in and making sure that I'm meeting our requirements and standards and things like that. And then maybe writing a comment or two like this is causing reflow here, like a paragraph maybe will be gaining a line in it. So
Oh,
that
okay.
bumps the rest of the text. So you have to mark where that happens because that can mess up the indexer who has to then index the book and write down page numbers or like this is where this is and stuff like that.
Well, very cool to know. Um, So, about how many books do you work on in a year? Or does it really change?
I think I did around 80-ish books in my time from like March 2020 to now.
Okay.
So I think it's like 40, almost 40 years. I'm trying, because I've only been in publishing technically for like 2 years in March. So it's not like, it doesn't seem like a number, but for the amount of work some of these have, you can be working on this. It could be like you're doing another fifth, like it's your fifth time circling around with corrections, and the printer date's coming up, and you're trying to get it out type deal. So yeah, I'm assuming that number is going to go up though, because Harper Collins definitely publishes more books than Houghton Mifflin did, because Houghton Mifflin was considered a mid-size publisher, and Harper Collins is a large-size publisher.
Oh, okay.
So I'm assuming that it's going to go up drastically.
Yeah. Is there anything that you think people should know about publishing, or like a common misconception about your field?
I think a common misconception is that it's, it's something different. It's like better than other jobs. Like you're going to be doing fancy parties and launch parties. They used to do that, but not really anymore because of the pandemic. I think it's just basically like any other job. You're going to have your ups and downs. And it's also a job where if you want to go into publishing, you know that you're not going to make a lot of money at the beginning, especially at the bottom. But I mean, yeah, once you work your way up, it'll be better. But I mean, I think this job, publishing, is you have to have a big passion for it. And if you don't, you might get burned out.
Yeah.
So.
Can you tell us about the magazine you work on, Burnt Pine? Because you're the co-founder and co-editor, right?
Yes. Burnt Pine magazine is the online journal that Alex and I co-founded back in summer 2016. We publish on the website fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. And lately we've been a little bit dormant because, we've been busy, and it's a lot of work because you can get hundreds of submissions that it's just both of us. Only two people are looking at these submissions, and it can be so time consuming to look at hundreds of submissions and decide, okay, which ones do we want? Like, which ones are meeting like our tagline of literature that burns like wildfire? I think that's what it is. Yeah. And you have to go and like write all these emails like, hey, this is what we want, like this has been accepted, this is rejected, and then you have to go and copy edit things and try and get in contact with authors, and that can be a whole thing. And then you go in and you have to format the pieces. And we use what do we use? We use WordPress. To format the pieces to look like what the authors want, and that can take some coding in the back end, like going in and saying like this is a paragraph, needs to be italicized, and like formatting how it looks in the page, which can take a whole lot of other time too. So like we've been dormant, but like it's fun, but it's just been a lot of work, and now we're just kind of taking a small break. I hope that we do reopen for submissions in the next year or so, but I don't know when that'll happen because we're both doing our things. He's in California and I'm over in Boston, so we're by two different sides of the country.
So how can people find back issues of Burnt Pine to see what's been published since 2016?
We have on our website, birdpint.wordpress.com, we have a little tab that shows like issues in it, and then it just kind of shows like issue 1, issue 2, issue 3. So you can go and click on those little tags, and it'll should lead you to the sort of like table of contents of those issues. So that's how you would find those. Yeah.
Very cool. So can you tell us your favorite book that you worked on, or is that one of those things that, you can't pick favorites because they're all special?
since I don't really get to read them when I'm working on them, I don't know if I have a favorite. I know I have a pile of books below here. I'm gonna reach down and grab one. There was one, I guess it was like, I guess the most fun I got to work on. It's the Seven Sins of Memory. We did an updated 20th anniversary edition.
Very cool.
And I think this was like my favorite one to work on because it gave me more of a challenge, because the author liked the original interior design, and that was from 2001. So the files that we had to make the design were unusable and very, very outdated.
Well, with how fast technology changes, yeah, 2001 is a long time.
So I had to take basically a document of the design specifications, which it would like list like a paragraph should be this size font with this size like leading, so the space in between the lines, and then it would say that the chapter titles need to be this type of font at this size. And then I also looked at a PDF of the book too, because we had a PDF, thank goodness. And I basically had to recreate the whole design.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had to retry and copy everything and recreate it. And that was, I think, only maybe like 6 months into my job at HMH. So I was very daunted with, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do this. Like, but luckily, you know, my supervisor, she helped out a lot with it. And yeah, we were able to publish it. So that was, I think, one of my favorite books. And then I have to do like a little ego boost books here. Two of my other favorite books were ones that got my name in the acknowledgments, and that doesn't
very
happen.
Cool.
My title would be like a compositor, and usually they don't list, authors don't list their compositors in the acknowledgments. So like when I found out that I have the books too.
Wonderful.
So this is the second book. It's called The Gilded Cage by Lynette Noni. She was the first author to put my name in here. So I'm like, I'm gonna buy your book. So I was pretty excited. And the other one, these are both young YA novels, and the other one was A Dark and Starless Forest by Sarah Hollowell. She put my name in the acknowledgments. So those are a little bit favorite because of my ego. So.
Well, but I think it's really nice with the amount of work it sounds like you do helping get this book ready for everyone in the world to see, you know. It's kind of nice having your name in there.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've kind of talked about a lot of either, you know, editing work and publishing. Are you a writer yourself? Have you been published?
I have, but not recently. I was with Sheepshead Review. I had a couple pieces published. I think it's a short fiction, short nonfiction, and then I did have, I think, short fiction, and then kind of I think they're both little short fiction in some other online journals, I think. But that was, I think, in 2017. I mean, as with all people that are in publishing, I think we all want to publish a book. So, you know, I have 3 Google Docs for 3 books on my computer at all times, trying to, you know, maybe finish one. Yeah. So I try and write. I haven't had the time really to sit down, but when I do have time, like I have like a little notebook sometimes that I keep in my bed, because, you know, I wake up in the middle of the night because I can't sleep, and I just start writing too. So I try and write. I won't consider myself a writer, but I try.
Well, thank you for joining us today and telling us all about, you know, editing and publishing and a little bit about writing. Is there anything else you want to tell us or to promote?
Thank you for having me. It's been a real joy. Anything to promote? Read. Go buy a book, because, you know, it goes toward my paycheck. Harper Collins Publishers and or HMH.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. This was a lot of fun, and it was very cool to like learn more details about what you do. So thank you again.
Thanks for having me.